Welcome everyone to the Defeat Trump, Heal America Town Hall. My name is Emily Lee and I'll be your MC for tonight. First, I'd like to welcome Taina Silly, who is a New York-based Puerto Rican singer, filmmaker, and activist, and guitarist Gaetano Vaccaro, who will be opening our program tonight with a powerful performance. Please take it away, Taina.
What's up, everybody? My name is Taina Silly, and I'm ready to defeat Trump. Hey. Desafiantes, ingobernables, lo rechazamos y no le tememos. Elegimos la libertad sobre el miedo, porque nuestros futuros están interconectados. Las vidas negras importan. Black Lives Matter. Ningún ser humano es ilegal. No human being is illegal. El agua es vida. Water is life. Basta de violencia machista and sexist violence. No es mi presidente. No representan la voz de mi gente. Si está conmigo, pues diga presente. Que grite, no es mi presidente. No es mi presidente. Organizaremos el pueblo como siempre. Ese poder es como un corriente. Grita, no es mi presidente. En obra de mis antepasados. Resistencia unificada es nuestra herencia. Tenemos todo lo que necesitamos. Para ser los agentes colectivos del cambio. Él no es mi presidente, él representa la voz de mi gente. Si está conmigo, pues diga presente. Él dice, no es mi presidente, no es mi presidente. Organizaremos el pueblo como siempre. Esa pared es como un corriente. Dice, no es mi presidente. It's time to see ourselves in one another. Hey. Collective liberation and solidarity. This is a resounding call for tomorrow. Reclaim our power and our humanity. Cause he is not my president, the 1% irrelevant, our people discontent. But we are the water to douse his flames. Somos la solución, la oración, el corazón para liberación. Somos la llamada para mañana. No es mi presidente, él me representa la voz de mi gente. Si está conmigo, pues diga presente. El grita, no es mi presidente, no es mi presidente. Organizaremos el pueblo como siempre. Ese poder es como un corriente. Grita, no es mi presidente, no es mi presidente. Él me representa la voz de mi gente. Si está conmigo, pues diga presente. El grita, no es mi presidente, no es mi presidente. Organizaremos el pueblo como siempre. Ese poder es como un corriente. Grita, no es mi presidente. Gracias. Hola a todos. Me llamo Taina Silly y gracias por estar con nosotros. Si quieres escuchar este programa en español, visite el link que está en tu pantalla o en el chat. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Taina and Gaetano. Wow, I'm feeling so fired up and we're ready to go. Just want to reiterate, there will be Spanish translation. So folks who need it, please follow the link on your screen. And they just performed No es mi presidente, or Not my president. And there's no better way for us to start our evening than with those lyrics. So again, my name is Emily Lee. I'm the director of San Francisco Rising Action Fund based out of the Bay Area in California, and really excited to be your MC tonight because two organizations I'm very proud to be part of are hosting this Defeat Trump, Heal America Town Hall. The first is Seed the Vote, which is partnering with grassroots organizations rooted in working class communities and communities of color in battleground states, including Arizona and Pennsylvania. So instead of parachuting in for a short-term campaign, they are supporting local groups to build power for the long term. The other group sponsoring our event tonight is People's Action, a national network of 43 grassroots organizations in 29 states. One of the most powerful national organizations because of its direct connection to local organizing on the ground. As a co-founder of Seed the Vote and a board member of People's Action, I know personally that this is a dynamic duo pairing up to do everything in their power to defeat Trump. And together, Seed the Vote and People's Action are co-hosting deep canvas phone banks with local groups in 7 battleground states. So some of you might be asking, what is deep canvassing and how exactly is it going to defeat Trump and heal America? In preparation for tonight, I've been talking to volunteers who I know personally have volunteered for these deep canvas phone banks. And what they told me is that this is literally how we heal America. That in these troubled times, it is so important for us to talk to each other, whether we agree with each other or not. And in a time of COVID and deep isolation that people are experiencing in this pandemic, deep canvas is actually a weapon of mass connection. As our volunteer said, this is laying the groundwork for people to not just hear each other, but to move each other with compassion, vulnerability, and love. And we surely do need more of those values in these times. So tonight we have a really unique program for you. We're going to be joined by Congresswoman Jayapal and hear a message from Senator Sanders and hear what they have to say about deep canvassing. We're going to learn about where deep canvassing came from, its origin story, and right hot off the presses, we're getting the results of an experiment that shows deep canvassing is one of the only proven methods to shift the presidential vote. And then we'll hear from our deep canvass experts themselves and our volunteers. So the most important thing is we're going to tell you how to get plugged in and that you should be texting WIN to 79606 to join our deep canvass program. Again, text WIN to 79606. And now I'm really excited to introduce George Gale, Executive Director of People's Action, to talk about where deep canvassing comes from. Over to you, George.
Hey, thanks, Emily. So good to see you tonight, and so well said. Yeah, my name's George Gale. I'm the Director of People's Action, and I really think good things happen when we see each other. And yet there's so much about the human experience and the systems and structures we live under right now that make it really hard to do that. And I've been reflecting on my last 25 years of organizing, and I feel like if it's taught me anything, especially in this moment, building a big enough we to win, to get the change that we actually deserve, requires that we get into deep conversation with people we don't always agree with. And in that spirit, today we launched the first season of To See Each Other. To See Each Other is a doc-style podcast that tells the story of rural organizing over the last 4 years, and it challenges the idea that we can write off whole swaths of the country and the people that live there. It would mean a lot to me if you take a second right now and subscribe. You can do so by going to wherever you listen to podcasts and just type in To See Each Other, or folks are putting the link in the chat and you can just click on that and subscribe. So this podcast didn't come out of nowhere. Following the election of Donald Trump, People's Action decided to help build new multiracial, race-conscious organizing in rural communities that had no progressive organizing for years. And we started by doing what organizers do best. We listened. We went out and had thousands of conversations when we asked people what issues they cared about and what meaning they were making in this moment. And then we got to work on those issues. We organized around them and we won. And then people who'd never connected, despite living in the same small town, came together. And there were tough conversations and there were beautiful ones. And then something happened that was hard. Our position on immigrant rights for some folks was just a bridge too far. They had not embraced the same immigration policy that we cared about. And we knew we had to deal with this. So we decided to test out deep canvassing, compassionate, curious conversations with people who didn't see the world the way we did. And we tested this out through the leadership of Down Home North Carolina, Michigan United, and Pennsylvania Stands Up. And guess what? It worked. One 15-minute conversation with a stranger on their front porch moved people in big ways, and that shift lasted for a long time. So now I want to share a clip of Caitlin Homerick Kneeling of Michigan United, who grew up in rural Michigan, moved to organize. This is her talking about her very first deep canvas conversation. Here's Caitlin.
So deep canvassing, I mean, I think you would assume that people would feel put off by the stranger asking what it was like for them to be a single mom 20 years ago, or what it was like for them to have to make decisions to go to work instead of taking care of their kids when they were sick, or instead of taking their kids to the doctors, still sending them to school. Or you'd think that they would feel that a stranger should not be asking them those questions. But if you have the courage to ask, people, for the most part, are willing to tell you. And for a lot of people, it's a transformative experience because nobody's ever asked them questions like that. Not even their closest loved ones or best friends. The very first conversation we had as part of this project, we kind of had a script with this first door that we went to, but it was really a mess. We just knew we needed to ask questions to get to his story and what he was connecting with immigrants. So his name was Ed, and I had two volunteers with me, Susan and Zareth. And they were just going to observe. And I was scared shitless because I had no idea what I was doing. So we asked Ed, how do you feel about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is definitely and 0 is definitely not, and 5 is undecided? I'm a 10, Ed says. Okay, well, what about if it included undocumented immigrants? He went off about how undocumented immigrants didn't deserve it and how that makes him want to put himself at a 0. I asked him if he knew any immigrants, and he didn't. Then I asked him, when's a time in his life when he's really needed care or support? And he started telling me about how he wasn't too happy with where his life was. Like, he's glad that he is where he is now in this trailer park in Oakland County, but he thought he was going to go a lot further. And he didn't, because instead he had struggled with addiction to the extent that he was incarcerated, that he was homeless for several years. And I just kept asking questions about that experience, about what happened and what it felt like, and what his relationship was to his family at that time. He shared about how his dad had been disappointed in him. And then he realized he did know an immigrant. His dad was an immigrant. His dad was an immigrant from England, and he worked in factories in England as a child and immigrated to the United States for a better life. And I kind of made the case to him that the immigrants coming over here and him have a lot more in common. This economy's hard and this world is hard, and they're just wanting to do what's best for their families. And he agreed. So by the end of the conversation, he had changed his mind completely. That was the first conversation. It was incredible. I cried a little bit, like I was tearing up. And Susan and Zareth and I looked at each other afterwards, like wide eyes and like our heads kind of like shaking or nodding, like just incredulous, disbelief. It was just amazing.
Hey, so that clip of Caitlin, that's from the second episode of To See Each Other. And there is a big twist at the end of this one. I think you'll like it. I hope you all will subscribe to See Each Other and check it out. I think it's going to do your soul good, especially in a moment like this when we're all struggling for hope. And then I hope you share it with a bunch of people, because we've got to push back on this notion that we can write off so many people and places. That's not a way we want to be, and it's certainly not a way to win. So thank you all for joining tonight, for all you're doing, and for doing the hard work to win elections and find ways to build a bigger and more powerful we. Thank you. Emily, I'm going to hand it back to you.
Thanks so much, George. Now I'd like to introduce Mehrdad Azemoun, People's Action Senior Strategist, to unveil the results of an exciting experiment about what exactly makes deep canvassing so effective. Over to you, Mehrdad.
Good evening, everyone. Listen, I'm so excited to be here tonight. Listen, time is of the essence. It's less than 50 days till Election Day itself. And in fact, election season has already begun. Some states have already mailed out their ballots. But I've got good news. We found a way to winning in November. I'm talking about how we heal our country way, way past this fall. Deep canvassing is that path. It's an amazing tool in that it is transformative, it persists, and we're going to use it at scale. And maybe best of all, in what can feel like a very soulless time because we're working virtually, deep canvassing demands that we share our own stories, that we share of each other. That's just what we heard from Caitlin and that clip that George played off the new podcast, To See Each Other. It's about how we drop assumptions about each other and use our compassion, use our persistence to have a courageous conversation with a stranger. So what is this deep canvassing thing? We just want to drop a quick slide. It was developed out of the ashes of a loss by the progressive movement, the defeat of a pro-gay marriage resolution in California in 2008 that we'll hear later about. It's an engagement tactic that goes beyond traditional politics because it is transformational. It's not just about a quick 2-minute transaction that's a meaningless conversation, just who are you going to vote for and goodbye. Deep canvasses are candid two-way conversations. It helps people reflect about a given crisis and make meaning out of it. And especially now, in the wake of so many crises, the pandemic, the recession, raging wildfires due to climate change, police shootings, we know that people can go one of many ways. And the question is, will we turn on each other or will we turn towards each other? Will we point the finger? Will we fuel the exact divisions that help Trump? Or will we turn towards each other and help build the bigger multiracial we that will win, that will heal, that will govern? Deep canvassing is the exact way to do that. And tonight we're thrilled to announce the results of a 6-state experiment that spanned 6 months. We tested a script that targeted conflicted voters and used longer deep canvas conversations of about 10 to 15 minutes on average. We asked 2 leading political scientists to track our results, and here's what we found. Our deep canvassing script had an overall impact of decreasing Donald Trump's vote margin by 3.1%. How big is that 3%? It's big. It's bigger than the 2016 vote margin in Michigan and Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Florida. It's a total of 108 electoral votes. And let's bring up another slide. This tactic is one of the only proven strategies to shift someone's vote for president. In fact, it's an estimated 102 times more effective per person than the average persuasion program. So compared with things like TV ads, direct mail, conventional canvassing by phones or on doors, our script and approach is 102 times more effective. So the question is, are you in? And I'll conclude here. We're hearing from a lot of important people tonight. The most important person on this call is you, because you're the reason we'll win. You're the person who can take action and use deep canvassing to reach out to others, have a conversation that's about true connection, not a transaction, and in the process will help decide the fate of our country. So with your phone, text the word WIN, W-I-N, to this number, 79606, 79606. I'll see you at the phone banks and the virtual victory parties. I'm going to turn it back to Emily, our MC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehrdad. That is amazing. 3.1%, and that is how we are going to win this November, this election season. So now I have the pleasure of introducing Congresswoman Jayapal, representing Washington's 7th District. Let's show some love in the chat box and join me in welcoming Congresswoman Jayapal.
Emily, thanks so much. It is really great to be back with People's Action as you launch your deep canvassing program. I want to say a huge thank you to all of the canvassers and volunteers who are doing the organizing necessary to defeat Trump and save our democracy at a moment when everything we care about is on the line. And I mean everything. And I come to you, for those of you who don't know me, Mehrdad and I and George and others have worked together for so long. I was an organizer, first and foremost, doing immigrant rights work. And now I'm an organizer in Congress. That's all that's changed. I'm still organizing for change and proud representative for Washington's 7th Congressional District, the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, to push ideas forward that are about justice for working people, for folks of color, Indigenous people across this country. Our task, Mehrdad and others have talked about it, is clear. And I think that the deep canvassing work that you are doing, that having just participated with Pennsylvania United and Pennsylvania Stands Up for deep canvassing training, we are turning our entire campaign operation towards this as well. And we are so proud to partner with you. We had an amazing training this weekend, and this idea of really listening to people, listening to the values, and listening to the vision and the dreams of where somebody wants to go, and then tapping into that reservoir of hope and belief about the greater good, about the common good, about the idea that our liberation and our freedom are intertwined. And I have seen that over and over again as I've worked across the country and worked with people of every party, that we actually do want the same things for our life. There is there is so much we have in common with people, and there's that human place to connect that I think deep canvassing is all about. It's not a transactional conversation. It is a really important conversation about good jobs, about being healthy, about a roof over our heads, clean air and safe drinking water, and seeing our kids succeed and saving our planet. We know what is happening right now, and I know my constituents every day are losing their homes. We are battling wildfire smoke out here in Seattle. But even before COVID hit, 87 million people were already uninsured or underinsured. We had the worst inequality since the Great Depression. People couldn't find good paying jobs that gave them dignity and financial security. And 40% of Americans didn't even have $400 in their bank account. Farmlands were flooding from climate change, and trade wars were devastating entire communities, and workers have been attacked and underappreciated for a long time. So we all need help. We need each other, and we need you. What Mehrdad said, that you are the most important person on this, is really what is true. It is your experience, your voice, and your relationship with the people that you talk to as you do this deep canvassing that is really going to matter. This is a moment when we can't leave a single thing on the table. These conversations that you are going to have may not be easy, but they will be illuminating. These are long phone calls, the very essence of deep canvassing, that come down to that power of listening and finding that human connection, and then helping people to understand that their vote is their voice, is their power, is our country. That is what we are going to need to change the country and to make it better. Your deep canvassing efforts are going to help tip the scales in critical swing districts and help defeat this dangerous, corrupt, racist, xenophobic, constitution-destroying president, and finally put us on the path to policies that lift up working people and put people over profits. So if you need proof about how your conversations and your organizing and your deep canvassing can tip the scales, you don't need to look very far. Each one of you has an example, but I'll just bring up 2016 and Michigan, where working people in Michigan felt left behind, didn't feel it was necessary to vote for president. 10,000 votes is what we lost the state of Michigan by. There were 20,000 fewer voters in Michigan in 2016 than 2012. And there were 100,000 people who went to the polls and filled out every line on the ballot except for president. So let's change that this time, and let's make sure that we get everybody out to vote, to change, to get this president out, and to take back the Senate and the House. But more importantly than any of that electoral politics, to change the direction of every individual's life. and to make it possible for us to dream again, to dream about a vision of Medicare for all and a climate that we actually address with justice and jobs and decarbonization, to think about all the ways in which workers can be treated with dignity and respect, and to pass those policies. So thank you so much for understanding that organizers know that strength comes in times of crisis. That is where the strength emerges. And that's what we need now, is your strength, your power, your vote, your voice, your work, and ultimately your belief that we can change this country together. Thanks so much, everybody, and good luck on this incredibly important project.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for those powerful words. We will tip the scales with you standing strong next to us. Thank you so much. Now we're going to hear from some of our three panelists are Steve DeLine from the New Conversation Initiative, Maria Elena Fournier from Michigan People's Campaign, and Bonnie Dobson from Down Home, North Carolina. I'm going to pass it over to you, Steve.
Thanks, Emily, and hello, everyone. So at the New Conversation Initiative, we work with partners to help build and scale deep Canvas programs like this one with People's Action. But my journey with this work started about 11 years ago. I was part of the team in the LGBT rights movement that created this approach, and I started out as a very scared volunteer. So on the same night in 2008 that Barack Obama won the presidency, the people of California voted by a very large margin to take the right to marry away from same-sex couples. And as a young gay person, I was devastated in ways that I didn't really have words for at the time. Until eventually someone got me to agree to volunteer with this experimental project to do the absolute last thing I wanted to do and try to talk to the people who had voted against us. And I was so scared heading to that first canvas that I had to pull my car over and call my partner and get him to tell me why I shouldn't turn around, why I was doing this. But at that first canvas, I found myself standing at this guy's door who had voted against us. And over the course of the conversation, we were able to just be humans together and talk about our lives and about the election and how we had both felt about it. And the weight of fear I'd been carrying of him started getting a lot lighter. And I could sense that his fear of me started to drop away as well. And it was the first thing that made me start to feel less powerless. And that project, that experiment, is what became deep canvassing. It wasn't created in a lab. It was a big team of people going to the doors to try and fail and figure out a way to have conversations that could change hearts and minds. And once we felt like we were onto something powerful, we started to apply this tactic at scale in places where it was most needed. In Minnesota in 2012, 14,000 volunteers had 220,000 deep canvas